Good morning, students. Welcome to the second part of the last lesson. In the first part, we read that some part of France has been annexed by German Prussian army, and in the district of Alsace and Lorraine of France, it has been ordered that German be taught in place of French. That's why it is a last lesson in French, and whatever is narrated here is the last day experience of French language class by Franz, a student. The teacher on that day was unusual. Some people from the locality, from the community had attended the class, and their teacher, Mr. M. Hamel, was wearing a kind of unusual dress, and his behavior was polite on that day. Now let's move to the second part. Some old people who attended the school were carrying some basic books of French because they hadn't studied the letters or the basics of the language, and they were interested to learn before they lose their language forever. Now come to the next paragraph from here. While I was wondering about it all, M. Hamel mounted his chair and in the same grave and gentle tone which he had used to me, said, "My children, this is the last lesson I shall give you. The order has come from Berlin to teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. The new master comes tomorrow. This is your last French lesson. I want you to be very attentive." So whatever takes place after this, you need to bear the heart and soul and wear the spectacles of a teacher to understand, because his job is going to end and he is very much emotional about uh, serving his duty for the last time in the school of France, that is Alsace and Lorraine. That's why he requests everyone to be attentive. What a thunderclap those words were to me! Thunderclap is something like cheering up or clapping, but here it is not cheering up or clapping. It is something that has broken the silence or had forced French to think. Oh, the wretches! Wretches mean the poor thing. That was that. That was what they had put up at the town hall. Now French understands what was pasted or glued up in the notice board, in the bulletin board, and why people were gathered there. My last French lesson? Why, I hardly knew how to write. I should never learn any more. He is shocked, surprised, because he thinks that his learning of French ends here before he begins learning it properly, and he almost repents. I must stop then? Stop there then? He cannot believe that he had to stop learning. Oh, how sorry I was for not learning my lessons, for seeking birds' eggs or going sliding on the Saar. My books that had seemed such a nuisance a while ago, so heavy to carry. My grammar and my history of the saints were old friends now that I couldn't give up. So he wonders those books which were a burden for him is no more his burden. All those books now seem to be his friend. He also repents how he had wasted his time by looking for birds' eggs or going sliding to the river Saar. So this has given him an opportunity to think and repent how he had not respected his own mother tongue and was careless in learning the language. And M. Hamel too. So not only he had to give up the learning of French, but he had to lose M. Hamel, the teacher. The idea that he was going away, that I should never see him again, made me forget all about his ruler and how cranky he was. So in French's view, Uh, M. Hamel was a rude teacher who always talked with his ruler, and he was a kind of strange being, an eccentric being, and punished in awkward ways. But to carry from his mind these two things, his way with the ruler and his eccentric behavior and awkward way of punishment. Poor Ben. It was in honor of his last lesson that he had put on his fine Sunday clothes, and now I understood why the old men of the village were sitting there in the back of the room. It was because they were sorry too that they had not gone to school more. And why other people had gathered up there? Because they hadn't learned French much in their life. That's why they also attended the last lesson. It was their way of thanking our master for his 40 years of faithful service and of showing their respect for the country, and that was theirs no more. So it was a kind of farewell meet. While I was thinking of all this, I heard my name called. It was my turn to recite. He was lost in thought, but now it was his turn. Something was asked to him, something was asked to French. What would I not have given to be able to say that dreadful rule for the participle, although very loud and clear and without one mistake? And he realizes that he had made a lot of things prepared well to his best to utter those words, to recite those words clearly, loudly, without one mistake. But he got mixed up on the first words and stood there holding on to his desk. His heart started beating and he couldn't dare to look up. I heard M. Hamel say to me, I won't scold you, little Franz. You must feel bad enough. See how it is. Every day we have said to ourselves, Bah, I have plenty of time, I'll learn it tomorrow. So politely, M. Hamel, the teacher, tells everyone that how they have put up their tasks for the next day. And now you see where we have come out. Ah, that's the great trouble with Alsace. The teacher generalizes the problem. He says that it's not an individual problem, it is the problem of the whole Alsace people. They never took learning of French seriously. She puts up learning till tomorrow. She means Alsace. That means entire Alsace, the motherland, puts up learning till tomorrow. Now those fellows out there will have the right to say to you, how is it? You pretend to be Frenchmen and yet you can neither speak or write your own language. Now people will ask you all, everyone, the past generation will question to this generation, though you are a French being, Frenchman, you don't know how to speak in French. But you are not the worst, poor little French, he consoles. But you are not the worst. We have all a great deal to reproach ourselves with. So the problem is not yours only, it is the entire Alsace and Lorraine people who have neglected the language, and we have to reproach ourselves, we have to scold ourselves, because we all have been uh, avoiding the language learning. Your parents were not anxious enough to have you learn. They preferred to put you to work on a farm or at the mills so as to have a little more money. And this is not only your responsibility. You are not only responsible, you are not only liable for the failure of learning the language French. It is because of your parents too, who engaged you in different works, who sent you to the farms, to the mills. And I have been to blame also. And the teacher M. Hamel also says it is not only your parents too, it is me too, who had sent you to water my flowers instead of learning your lessons. And when I wanted to go fishing, did I not just give you holiday? And whenever I went fishing, I gave you holiday. That means M. Hamel wants to say that every one of us neglected this language and didn't take this language seriously, and the now time has come to realize our mistakes. Then, from one thing to another, M. Hamel went on to talk of the French language, saying that it was the most beautiful language in the world, the clearest, the most logical, that we must guard it among us and never forget it. So, the time has come when we should show our own respect for our language, that is chauvinism. We have to learn the language French as if this is our guard. This will save us from uh, being enslaved by someone else, some foreign power, some foreign language. Because when a people are enslaved, as long as they hold fast to their language, it is as if they had the key to their prison. When a person knows his own language very well, properly, he can raise his voice, and if one can raise his voice, that becomes the key that can open the locks of the prison. Then he opened a grammar and read us our lesson. I was amazed to see how well I understood it. All he said seemed so easy, so easy. I think to that I had never listened so carefully. So French also listens carefully, or the teacher also teaches seriously. Anyway, the learning becomes smooth that day, and he realizes that he had never explained everything with so much patience. And Hamel also had explained everything with patience that day. It seems almost as if the poor man wanted to give us all he knew before going away. As it was the last lesson, he wanted to tell everything, he wanted to explain everything, he taught the essence of everything of that language, French. And to put it all into our heads at one stroke, and he wants to uh, give away everything he had learned and experienced in that language. So it was supposed to be his best of classes. After the grammar, we had a lesson in writing. That day, M. Hamel had new copies for us written in a beautiful round hand. So on that day, after the grammar class, M. Hamel wanted to teach them some writing in French. He had written beautifully on the new copy, France Alsace, France Alsace. They looked like little flags floating everywhere in the schoolroom, hung from the rod at the top of our desk. So M. Hamel had distributed some writing copies or handwriting copies which look like flags when kept on their desks. You ought to have seen how everyone set to work and how quiet it was, and everyone was quiet on that day. The only sound was the scratching of the pens over the paper. Everyone was busy writing, and no other sound could be heard. Once some beetles flew in, but nobody paid any attention to them, not even the littlest ones. So in the classroom, some beetles flew in, but nobody paid any attention to them. Not even the littlest ones mean it may have two connotation. One is that uh, the youngest children inside the class also didn't amuse by looking at the beetles. He didn't took any notice, which was unusual. And another connotation is that in the classroom there was a pigeon nest, and the nestling there may be compared with the term of phrase littlest ones. Even the smallest of the birds didn't took interest, who worked right on tracing their fish hooks. Now, if the first connotation is to be taken into consideration, the youngest children in the classroom were tracing their fish hooks, and fish hooks are the extra signs or the some kind of marks given on French alphabet, which is usually not pronounced are known as fish hooks. So they were practicing these small fish hooks or the special signs written on or above or below the French alphabets, and they were serious about these things. This is one connotation, and the second connotation is that the littlest one means the pigeons, and the fish hooks are their nails of their claws, and they were scratching something maybe on the wall or somewhere, and they were also busy in doing something as if they were also serious in learning French. On the roof, the pigeons cooed very low, and I thought to myself, will they make them sing in German, even the pigeons? And French wonders. Everyone is serious, everyone is learning the language French. And are the pigeons too learning the French as if from tomorrow onwards they will be forced to learn German? Whenever I looked up from my writing, I saw M. Hamel sitting motionless in a chair and gazing first at one thing, then at another, as if he wanted to fix in his mind just how everything looked in that little school room. Fancy, for 40 years he had been there in the same place, with his garden outside the window and his class in front of him. So for 40 years M. Hamel had been teaching in that school, and now things have changed. So with this we conclude today's class. Tomorrow we'll learn the last part. Thank you.